Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your old pal. Thanks for joining us here on the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. Please remember, I'm also your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer for Sports Illustrated. So thank you for being with us. We have so much to cover. Now, I'm taping this on Monday. Tomorrow at 4 o'clock Eastern is is going to be cut down day in the NFL to the 53-man roster. Then I'm going to have an opportunity to speak to Tom Telesco, the general manager. So tomorrow night's podcast is going to be all in depth on the 53-man roster. It's going to be the entire podcast. You're not going to want to miss it. It's going to be absolutely loaded with Raiders. We're going to go through every, we're going to go through every position on the roster. We're going to look at it. We're going to analyze it. We're going to look at players and a lot more. Now, it's very crucial to tell you a couple of things. I'm going to get into this more in a couple of minutes. I am not reporting this as factual, but I was told early Friday, it was late morning, early afternoon, that there was a chance that the Raiders may actually only keep two quarterbacks on the roster. And if Bradley cleared, perhaps put him on the practice, but that was, something that was being bandied about. I've heard nothing else. And at the time I said, what are the chances? And I was told that is not even a decision that had been made yet, but I was told it was a possibility. We're going to get into all of that again today. But one thing I can tell you is don't dismiss any possibility of trades at all. And there are going to be good players cut, very good players cut from that because of financial reasons. And the Raiders are sitting here today with $35 million in cap space. They're players. Now, does that mean they're going to go spend wantonly? Of course not. That's not the way Telesco rolls. It's not the way that the direction this franchise is going in, and they shouldn't be. But if there's a highly skilled veteran at a place where they're not convinced that they're steady, they would absolutely go. If there's a young player they think they can add and develop, and they're better than another young guy they have and can develop, absolutely. There are a lot of possibilities here. So I'm going to get into more of that in a minute. But we got a lot to talk with you about tonight, a lot to get into with you tonight. And let's just kick it and get right into it. Now, few things I want to address. Tomorrow at the owners' meetings, it is very imperative that there's something that's going to happen that I think is going to have a massive impact on the National Football League. It is a massive impact. The owners, and from what I'm hearing, it is expected to pass, but not for sure. But I was told by someone literally just a few moments ago I was communicating with before this podcast, and I said to them, how do you think this scenario plays out? This is somebody that'll be very aware of what's going on tomorrow. And they said the chances are it will probably pass, so the number will look higher because people want to keep demonstrating to the NFL world unanimity. So there'll probably be some owners that vote against that will end up voting for in the final. So it doesn't look like it was such a close vote. That's what I'm told. But they said anything can happen. Here's what's going to be discussed and what people I'm talking to, every person I've talked to either thinks it's going to pass or think it's a better than not chance it'll pass. Didn't mean they all liked it, but that's what they're thinking. And the NFL is discussing, going to make a decision probably tomorrow at the owners' meeting about allowing private equity companies to buy a 10% share of NFL franchises. Now, this does not mean that 10 private equity companies can come together and each buy 10%. It's a total cumulative amount of your franchise of 10% owned by venture capitalists. Now, this is a very big deal. First of all, it's going to throw the value of franchises through the roof. I was talking to one person today that said to me, the Raiders are probably anywhere from $6.5 to $7.5 billion franchise in real money. This could send them to north of 8. That's a humongous deal. Now, what does that mean in the NFL world? Few things. So let's say that you're the Raiders and you put a valuation on your franchise. Remember, you can evaluate your franchise at any value. It depends on what are people willing to pay. So most of you have seen the television show Shark Tank. They'll come in and rip people for their valuations. But here's what you need to know. There are only 32 NFL teams, and they are the most valuable pro franchises in the world. There are going to be venture capitalists who will want to get in this space. And because they're not having to buy the whole thing, they don't give a rat's rear end what the valuation is. Now, you say, why is that important? Stay with me. So I believe the Raiders recently had a valuation at $6.7 billion. That's what I believe it was. If I'm not accurate, I apologize. So let's say that Mark Davis says, you know what, we're in a great spot financially. I'm really not interested in adding a venture capitalist. Let's wait. Okay, so he waits. And let's say he waits a few years, and now some other teams who maybe were cash poor allow some teams to come in and they pay over valuation. Let's say there's a team that, is valuated at $5 billion. But the owner says, no, I think we're a $7 billion franchise. And they find a VC, a venture capitalist, private equity company that's willing to pay him a $7 billion franchise. Now, every other franchise goes up in value because the ones at the bottom have expressed it. So let's just say there's a $5 billion franchise that right now, I think everyone would agree isn't a $5 billion franchise. But they sell it at a valuation of 7. And there's no way that team is better off than the Raiders. So now the Raiders could jump to 8, 7, or even 9. So with Mark Davis having the Raiders in such awesome financial shape, he now, let's say he chooses to wait. He may not. I think he would, but let's just say he doesn't. All right. Now, those venture capitalists come in when the Raiders are worth $12 billion. So now to get a 10% stake is $1.2 billion. But Mark says, no, I think we're worth 15. So you sell them a stake at 1.5. Here's my whole point. I talked with some people who live in the venture capital world today who are extremely successful in this world. Men who billion-dollar deals are not a big deal to them. Okay, they live in this world. I have some people that I know very well that are in this world. And they said to me that the NFL world is so valuable, there's going to be people willing to pay for blue sky. Now, in case you don't know what that term means, I don't think that you're ignorant, but if you're not a business person, you may not understand the term blue sky. What blue sky means is you're paying for hope. You're paying for hope. You're not really paying what the business is worth. You're paying what you hope for. I hope that makes sense to you. Now, let me explain this to you in detail. He believes there's going to be a lot of people throwing around a lot of money who want to get in. Okay? So then watch what happens, though. What say do those venture capitalists get? So do you sell them a 10% minority share with no voice? Okay. But they have to get something to protect their investment. Hondo, where are you going with this? Remember when the NFL kind of passively rejected a Tom Brady buying of the Raiders because they thought he undervalued, that the Raiders undervalued what Tom was paying for what Tom was getting. So does this now offer an opportunity for a Tom Brady or anyone else to jump in at any franchise and say, listen, we want to buy a stake but we're going to buy it with Tom. Can Tom have a seat on the board, or can Tom have a place of authority? Or maybe they say you have no voice, but we do know Tom has one with Mark. There are a lot of things that'll impact the Raiders, but impact the NFL. But then when teams get ready to sell, here's what a private equity person said to me today. I think you'll find this interesting. He said, quote, here's the problem. Even if they're silent owners, they're going to have a say when franchises get sold. The team just doesn't get to make a decision, gee, we're selling today. Here's what you're getting. This is going to open it up because venture capitalists are venture capitalists for a reason. They want to make money. How much of a voice will they get? Will this lead to lawsuits if they feel like teams have been sold for less than value? How many times does a team get sold before a venture capitalist then decides to want to go to a different level? I think this is great for the NFL for a short-term infusion of cash. As a venture capitalist, I love it. But as a football fan, this is a dangerous road. Interesting. And I'm going to get into the Raiders tonight. We're talking a lot of Raiders, but this is a big deal coming tomorrow. And so I always try to give you information today that you can use tomorrow. And if this happens, we're not saying it is, but if it happens, I want you to be able to understand and at least have some groundwork. We don't know the rules. We don't know the specificity. And so, but this is something that I find very, very interesting. Now, one other thing that happened in the news today, and then we're going to get into a lot, all Raiders the rest of the way, I promise, is I mentioned you about the Raiders possibly only keeping 2 quarterbacks. The NFL has established a rule that they were going to allow you to move one player up as many times for the practice squad to the inactive list for every real game. Now, the rule was you could use your third quarterback if the other 2 were injured. So you leave them on the practice squad. You then elevate them to the 53 for game day only, inactivate them. But if the other 2 quarterbacks get injured, he's there. The NFLPA nixed this. Okay, now I'm going to tell you, I side with the NFLPA here. I talked with a couple players today who have either been NFLPA representatives on their pro team or presently are. And I asked about what was the reasoning here. And I thought it made great sense. They go, you've got a quarterback that you think can be legitimate. And so you're going to pay him less money, or another player, pay him a lot less money on the practice squad when they deserve to be on the 53. And then you get to elevate them every week. Great point. And they said in the interest of players not getting underpaid, that's why they went with it. So now you have to have your third quarterback if you're going to have one. And I told you the Raiders are considering not. I'll get to that in a minute. I was going to say so. I'll get to it in a minute. But he has to be on the 53-man roster. Can still be on the inactive. When the other 2 are injured, then he can move up. But he still has to be on the inactive. Now, and on the 53. Like I said, I'm hearing the Raiders are considering it. I don't think it's a done deal at all, but I know they're considering it. That's going to be one of the fun things we watch for tomorrow. All right, man, a lot of news there. Also, very, very quickly, to those of you who are members of this channel, thank you. It's $4.99 a month. I really appreciate you. There's a members-only video that pops up just for you. I need you to make sure if you're a member, you've read it and emailed me with the appropriate information. Twice a month, 12 months a year, we're going to do something free for you guys just as a thank you for being a member at $4.99 a month. It's worth it. And in a couple days, I'm going to actually post a video telling you when our first event is. Please make sure that you're reading it. If you're not a member, when you just go to the main page of Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, you can hit join and you can join there. It's $4.99 a month. You don't have to. Let me just say to all of you, Nothing is changing for free. We're adding something that hasn't been given to the general public, and we're adding it for them, but nothing with the coverage that you've gotten changes. I promise you that. And I'm the one in charge of it, so I would know if it was. Nothing changes. So you say, well, I don't want to do it. Great. You don't have to. No big deal. There's no pressure. You say, I want to, but I can't afford it. All right. When you can, join, but nothing's going to change for you. If you love the coverage we're giving you, nothing's going to change. All right. Let's get into some email. I got an email from Kenton W. From New Hampshire. Kenton says, Hondo, I am a huge Raider fan. My dad moved out here from California for a job many, many years ago, and I now stay here with my family and my children. We're big Raider fans. Hope to see you in Baltimore. My question to you is, I know how much you have thought of Malik Willis. When the Titans traded him for a 7th-round pick, what would you have thought if the Raiders would have made that move? Well, they didn't make the move, but I would have absolutely jumped on that if I'm the Raiders. I would have jumped on it. But there's a caveat. If you're only going to carry 2 guys, Malik would not make it on the 53. On the practice squad. So at this point, if you've decided, listen, we haven't had a training camp with him. We haven't had an exhibition season with him. So probably this late, I wouldn't, Kenton, do that. But if it was earlier, oh yeah, you better believe it. If it was before training camp, I would have jumped all over that deal in a big way. But that's a great question. I appreciate it. And you're right. I do think that Malik Willis was picked too high, but I do think that Malik Willis is a guy that I think could be developed into somebody. Great question from you. The next one says, and this comes from Mike H. in Ramona, California. Hondo, you've mentioned several times that the offense was hampered going against one of the best defenses in the NFL, but how about the opposite being true? Was the defense hampered by a poor offense? You know what, Mike? That is a great thought. And I thought about that a little bit, but quite frankly, not as much as I have since I got your email yesterday and it was passed on to me from some of my staff. Very good email. I do think that it hurt them a little bit. I do. Prior to your email, I thought about it and thought, yeah, probably some, but the more I've thought about it, I think it probably hurt them more than I thought. Not, it's not the death blow or anything like that, but I think it did hurt them. And that was a great, great question on your part. Again, that was Mike H. from Ramona, California. The next comes us from Sparks, Nevada. No idea where that's at, but good to hear from you. This is Zach G. Uncle Hondo. Would Al be proud of Mark? Do I think do I think Mark thinks about what his dad would do before he does stuff? Zach G. in Sparks, Nevada. Zach, I'm going to answer a couple things. First of all, I can't tell you what Al would think, and I can't tell you what Mark thinks. But I'm going to tell you I have an article coming next week you cannot miss on Mark Davis and his metamorphosis as an owner. You're not going to want to miss it. But I will tell you this. Mark reveres his father. And Mark is more committed to winning today. I would say his fire to win burns as strong as AP, maybe even brighter. He is not an old man, but each day he gets older. Each day he gets more mature in the owner's chair. And everything to Mark Davis is about winning, 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 winning. I can tell you this. I think that Mark and I have developed a very respectful relationship. I would use the term extremely friendly. I don't know what term Mark would use, but I believe that he would use that. He's very genuine. I like him and I respect him. And as I've been here 5 years, I've watched him change. And I know that he holds his father in reverence. I cringe when I see the shots fans take at him. I just don't think they're fair. And that's fine. They're allowed to do whatever they want. But I've heard people say he doesn't care about winning, whatever. I totally disagree with that. I think his wallet and checkbook prove that he does care. And I can tell you on private conversations, of which I'm not going to ever betray his confidence, I know for a fact, 100% factually, there's nobody in this franchise, anybody, as committed to winning as him. He's tired of losing. He's frustrated with losing. He is on a we have to win mentality. I love that. I think that Mark Davis is a plus for this organization. I am not saying that to kiss up to him. I've been critical when I felt it was warranted, and I can tell you that I know that doesn't bother him because I'm fair. But I can tell you also, I am my own man. I am my own man. And if I felt he had hurt if I felt that he was hurting the franchise, I would say it. I think Jerry Jones is a good man who's done a lot in his career. But at this place in his career, I think he's hurting the franchise. Okay. Al Davis, I've said this so many times. He's the most iconic professional sports owner in any sport anywhere in the world. But is it not fair to say in his latter years, I think he hurt the franchise? Do I think his heart was to do it? No. Did I think he did it maliciously? Come on now. Of course not. The man's an icon. But I truthfully believe that. Okay. I think there have been times when Mark hurt the franchise. I don't think it's there. I think he's grown as an owner. I think he's changed in that chair. And I think he's an asset for the Raiders. And I'm going to talk more about it next week in my very special article that you're not going to want to miss. So I don't know, Zach, to answer your question, what he thinks about specifically, but I do know his father's shadow looms large over him. And his father's just completely commitment to winning burns in Mark's belly. Burns in it. So if I had to guess, and remember, I'm guessing, which I hate to do because I've not specifically asked Mark, but based upon conversations and moves and things I think he's done, like firing Josh McDaniels, I think 100% absolutely he thinks about what his dad would do. And that's a good thing. My father cast a very large shadow over my life. And I think about what would he do every day. In fact, I've been thinking all afternoon about something that happened in my life today. And I'm thinking about, all right, I even had a conversation with my beautiful bride. Babe, I'm really struggling trying to think about how my dad would handle this. I think any son who had a father, now I'm not talking about a sperm donor, and I'm not just talking about somebody that said, I'm a dad, had a father. And there is a difference. Anyone that had a father thinks about that. And Al Davis was a father. And I am sure he does, although he has not personally told me that. Next, this comes from Doug H. in Colorado. He says, Hondo, you said it would take 3 to 4 weeks for the O to get going. So should we give them whoever Gardner Minshew for getting the starting job an extra 3 or 4 weeks? Doug in Colorado. Okay, I want to go back and put my comments in perspective. I absolutely said I think it's going to take 3 or 4 weeks for this offense to get gelling. I believe that for a couple of reasons. The new NFL rules, training camp isn't what it used to be. It's just not. So even though they're hitting in training camp, it's not like it used to be. And we've seen a lot, not all, but offenses that go through a big transformation struggle to get their sea legs since all these changes have come. That's a fact. Do I expect Kansas City to come out and look terrible? No. But they've got just about everybody back. They know who they are. The Raiders are learning who they are. So I think it takes 3 or 4 weeks. And I want to, this was Doug H. Doug, I would say to you, I think it's a very fair question. You know, Colton Miller is a stud. We know he's going to be a stud. But for the first time in his life, he's going to line up next to Cody Whitehair. We're going to have to learn that. Okay, Jackson Powers Johnson. At some point, they're hoping he gets into there. So what happens if we get to week 3 or 4 and bam, JPJ's in there? Now Colton's going to learn and JPJ's going to have a learning process. So the question is, I've said it would take 3 or 4 weeks. Do I think it would be fair? Then do you give Colton 8 weeks? I mean, do you give Gardner 8 weeks? Great question. And I'm going to be brutally blunt, and I'm not trying to be a politician here. I'm not a fan. But to me, it's going to depend on what do the first 3 or 4 weeks look like. If the Raiders are 0-4, but it's not a Gardner Minshew issue, do you really change a quarterback if it's not him? If they're 1-3 but Gardner doesn't look good, if they're 0-4, what about if they're 2-2? I mean, I think it all depends on what if they're 3-1, but they're 3-1 because the defense has scored multiple touchdowns and the offense has been in. I mean, if they're 3-1, do they make a change then at 3-1? I think it all depends on not just the record, but how are things looking. So I want to assure you, I'm not afraid to say, hey, go to the other guy. This is where the disappointment comes in when somebody didn't win the job. Both guys were disappointing because neither one really took a step. So you give it to Gardner, but it wasn't like he won. If he had won it, it'd have been his job. If he had won it, I mean, come out and just won the thing, him or Aiden, I would have thought they would get 8 to 9 weeks. But depending on how the thing looked. I don't feel that way now, but we will revisit it after 3 or 4 weeks. We're going to revisit it every week, but we're going to keep talking about how did they lose? What happened? Okay, none of us expect this, but what if it's a defensive collapse and they're 0-4, but they're scoring 40 a game? Of course you're not going to change. Do I expect that? No, neither scenario I don't expect. But interesting question, and I appreciate that. Again, that was from Doug H. in Colorado. Doug also said he would like to meet me when I'm in Colorado. Let me say this to all of you. If you come to a Raiders home game, about 2.5 hours, could be 2:45, could be 2:15, but roughly 2.5 hours before each home game, I will walk Lot J. I want to meet you. Come up and say hi. Please, I want to talk to you. Let's take pictures. Let's laugh and have a good time. If you've never been to Lot J, go there. I've had a lot of people say, hey, could you come over to this lot? Could you go to that lot? That's a working day for me. And Lot J is just outside the stadium, so I get to walk there, then get right back and get to work. So I guess if it were a lot next door and there was enough of you, maybe. No promises. But every home game, I'll be in Lot J. Unless it's just brutally hot, which I think we'll be all right. But the first home game, week 3 against Carolina, Shannon's going to be with me in the lot. And trust me, you may not want to meet me, but you do want to meet my bride. She is a humongous. Oh, she was showing me today. She's got new Raider tennis shoes and new Raider earrings and Raider dress and all this Raider stuff. It's hilarious. Absolutely. We're going through the airport the other day. She sees a Raider fan. She yells out, Raider. I'm like, Shannon, come on. You're with me. She goes, hey, don't blame me. I looked at her and laughed. So, yeah, but Shannon will be with me. We'll be there in Lot J. Hope to meet all of you. But so when you go to road games, I just don't have the time. Plus, I don't know where the lots are, and that just makes it really difficult. Maybe if you got a group of 10 or 20 of you that wanted to meet the night before at a local establishment, I would probably come by that. But game day, very, very difficult for me because it's a working day. Thank you so much, though, for inviting me, Doug H. The next one comes from M. Brooks in Charlotte, North Carolina. If Gardner works, do I think the Raiders will keep Aiden OConnell and develop him like the Packers did with Jordan Love and the Chiefs did with Patrick Mahomes? Maybe. You still got him for 2 more years on the cheap. You saw a lot in the rookie year. Maybe they see something this year in practice that they say, yeah, we still believe in this guy. Let's ride with Gardner for another year, but we think he could be. Absolutely, I think that is a potential. Do I think it's probable? Maybe. But we're going to have to wait and see how the year. Some of y'all are asking me questions about a lot of hypotheticals, and we got a whole year ahead of us. We got to wait and see how this thing plays out. The next one comes to us from Randy H. And Randy says, does Gainer make it? And who would I pick between Gainer and Mowaga? Now, I want to grab something right here. Forgive me. I want to talk to you about Mr. Mowaga. I want to read something to you. So give me a second to find this. So who he's talking about is another Raider player, Mowaga. First of all, I do think Gainer makes it. I feel very comfortable and confident in that. But I don't see and believe his name is Kana Mowaga. He's a second-year player out of USC. I would not see Mowaga beating Gainer. I don't see that. I just don't. Practice squad, maybe for sure. But I don't see him beating out Gainer for a spot on the roster. But yes, I do think Gainer makes it. I do for sure. Well, I say for sure. I'm 85% certain that Gainer will make it. But again, you just don't. Just because somebody makes the 53-man roster doesn't mean that they make the 53 to start the season. Going to be a lot of cuts. A lot of cuts. Lastly, I have had a lot of people email me on a very certain subject about the Raiders. About another person comes out and says that Devonte is unhappy. I'm not touching that. I'm not going there. I'm not going to talk about it. All I can go on when talking to you is what Devonte has said. To get into speculation would not be journalistic integrity on my part. Okay? So someone said it who has a semblance of relationship with him, so it is noteworthy to report. It's not clickbait. That's noteworthy. And based on Netflix and other things, that is something of which is okay. It's noteworthy. But until Devonte says something, or his representatives, then I don't believe it's journalistically integrous for me to discuss it on a podcast. It doesn't mean that I won't discuss it at another time should things develop or things happen that I now think it becomes warranted. But I got well over 100 emails about it. And so I felt like I needed to address with you why I'm being silent. Some people have said, oh, you're being silent trying to protect the team. That's not my job. Some said you're being silent because you've broken all the news about Devonte, including him coming here, and you're protecting Devonte. It's not my job. My job is to report to you what's going on with the team. And so this is somebody saying something. Okay? It's noteworthy, but there's nothing for me to report on. And so I don't want you to think I'm just ignoring all of your emails. And I've got them all from I don't blame him from being mad to I'm tired of his drama. Well, if you come from those opinions, then you are assuming what has been said is correct, which I can see where people would feel that way. And then other people saying it's just clickbait. No, I don't think it's just clickbait when it's somebody that there's a semblance of relationship with. But I also don't think it's fair for me to address unless I have more concrete reasons to believe either way. So I know that he's told me he wants to be a Raider. He is here, and I'm going to take him at his word. Should I ever gather evidence or have any other reason to unequivocally doubt him, I would report it. But that's not the case. So I wanted to give you the courtesy and the respect of an answer since so many of you asked me to comment. Okay? I hope that settles it. Just not going to be addressing it. Not going to be addressing it. I appreciate all of you. Remember, if you're a member, please watch that video. If you're not and you want to be, would hope to see you. But tomorrow's going to be a big podcast. So 4 Eastern is when the cuts will be made. Shortly, sometime after, I'll be talking, and some others will be talking as well, with Tom Telesco. And then I'll be doing my podcast, going down the roster, everything. A lot to talk about. I hope to see you there. Thank you, everybody, for listening tonight. I appreciate you. God bless you. We'll see you back here tomorrow after the cut down and a talk with Tom Telesco.